The patch notes for the current update read, quote, Azuma is admittedly trailing behind her closest rivals, mainly by damage dealt, so we're giving her a straightforward main battery buff, end quote. And, well, if Azuma was trailing behind her peers in terms of damage dealt, I doubt she is anymore. Specifically, though, let me run down what the list of buffs were so we have a clear idea of what we're talking about. The main battery on the Azuma was decreased from 26 to 24 seconds at base. I think I've got it down to 21 seconds with my commander build. The high explosive shell damage was increased from 4,500 to 5,100. Likewise, the maximum AP shell damage was increased from 8,150 to 8,650. Main battery AP penetration was increased by 18.5%. The main battery AP ricochet angle was actually decreased from 50 degrees to 45. The main battery 180 traverse turret speed 40 seconds to 36. Shell grouping improved by 7.5%. Main battery dispersion slightly reduced. Nevertheless, no problem taking out that Atlanta right in the center of the map who was threatening our destroyer in the Bravo cap. Now that Atlanta is gone, the game is totally open for that destroyer in the center, and he'll be able to take the Bravo cap easily. But as the patch note said, Azuma, prior to this update, was a little bit mediocre. I always thought the reload on these guns was way too long, and this ship just didn't seem able to pump out all the requisite damage. Now, however, the ship seems to be in a pretty good state, at least for me. I know some of my colleagues have made videos on it talking about the buff, but I have not watched any of these videos. Although I do gather from the sense I get at looking at what people in the community say about this ship, that the armor piercing is what is so good about this buff. That 18.5% buff to penetration, certainly a useful thing, and this AP absolutely slaps now, particularly against broadside cruisers, which it can citadel into oblivion, as you saw with the Atlanta, and then I think you saw I got a citadel a little bit later on that Baltimore out there. So the AP is quite nice. It can also rip apart battleships too, especially the more lightly armored ones if you hit them in the sides. I've citadeled battleships no problem with this armor piercing, especially the American battleships, which tend to be a little bit more lightly armored and easy for this AP to penetrate. I've citadeled a number of Massachusetts so far, and the salvos have been for like 19-20k. It's absolutely fantastic. The AP is indeed very good. But I was sort of struggling for a little bit of time to figure out how to use this ship super optimally. I played several games with AP only just to test out the efficacy there, but I thought something was holding back my overall damage potential, and I think one thing people may be overlooking is the significance of the high explosive buff, because the Azuma's high explosive, even though its AP is very good, the high explosive is absolutely bonkers. It starts fires left and right. It has a huge alpha strike for the size of the guns. You can see we started 2 fires there, by the way, on the Poltava. Basically, the HE is monstrous. It deals a lot of damage, either through raw penetration, because of course these are 305mm guns, so they can penetrate a hefty amount of armor with their high explosive, and they do. Plus, they light the fires. If you really want to get the most out of the Azuma, I think you need to be switching your shells when the situation calls for it. You see, we got 2 fires against that Poltava. We switched to the AP when we thought he was giving us enough broadside, although he ricocheted the shells. So now we are switching to HE. But a little bit more on the Azuma's prowess with its shell type later. Something interesting is going on in this game where my entire team has essentially crashed this side of the map. Thanks to my early takeout of the Atlanta, the friendly destroyer was able to secure Bravo, so we have one cap in our name, and we're contesting the only enemy cap at Alpha here. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, our team has been completely dispatched. The rest of the enemy team, aside from the Poltava, is over there, and they're going to crash into Charlie and likely take it. So right now, our goal is going to be turning toward the center of the map. I have no idea if we're actually going to reach that Poltava. It really doesn't matter anymore. It's only a matter of time before he is sunk, and there he goes, and then this map is cleared out. We do need to finish taking this cap, and then we need to go over toward Bravo. By the time we finish taking Alpha, we'll have both Alpha and Bravo, which means we'll have a 2-cap advantage over the enemy, and our income of points will be larger and faster. So we'll have secured all the victory conditions we need to secure. All that will be left to do is to defend the Bravo cap from the approaching enemies. And in this upcoming sequence, I think I am going to make some fairly basic or even grievous mistakes that could have led to my demise, but for whatever reason didn't, so I'll try to point them out as they come. But the idea here is to essentially slow down all these ships before they get to the Bravo cap. Our destroyer is trying to help out with that, and I'm going to start assisting by shooting high explosive at long range. And here we'll get an idea of just how ridiculous the high explosive is. Over 6k on that Georgia with 4 shells, plus 2 fires. And there's more where that came from. So yes, the AP is fantastic now on the Azuma, but against angled targets, like battleships or even some cruisers, the HE is definitely what you want to use. The penetration is amazing, the fire chance is good, and the potential for damage over time is just excellent. In fact, fire damage is how we're probably going to be acquiring most of the damage dealt in this game, because the Azuma is, honestly, you could call it like a mini conqueror with how much the AP hurts, or rather, I'm sorry, how much the HE hurts, and how many fires the HE lights when it hits enemy ships. There, though, we turn broadside. We were pushing bow into the enemy. We didn't want to get stuck bow in. Our bow and our armor can be overmatched by some of these battleships over here, so we can't afford to get stuck in a place where they can just shoot at us and we can't maneuver. So we turned out, but we left it too late to turn out. And when we turned out, we got spotted by the enemy Azuma, so we took a Citadel shot, I think, in the side, but we are still floating, so it's all good. In any case, if you are going to make a turn in the Azuma to assume a kiting position, as I'm doing here, good idea to do that before you get spotted instead of after. There, by the way, is a good look at the AP in action against a very heavily armored battleship, a Bismarck. We still managed to do 10k to his broadside with the AP. So, that's not to say that it isn't effective, but I have heard a lot of people making a big deal about this AP, talking about how excellent it is, and I just want to impress upon the fact that I think if you want to get the most out of this ship and be the most effective damage dealer you can with it, then you need to be switching between the shell types as the situation dictates. In any case, our team is in the center. The enemy team is also in the center of the map, and both teams are pushing straight at each other, which, if you want my opinion, is a very creative deployment. The positioning here is probably winning awards for how genius it is on the part of both teams. Just sail straight at each other, point and shoot, and you're good. That's what's going on here. And because that's happening, and because of where the enemy ships are located, and my decision to come out here into our spawn, I actually have the broadsides of all these enemy ships. This is a crossfire I'm setting up with the Azuma, and that's something eminently possible to do with this cruiser. It is very stealthy, especially if you build for it. I've got Concealment Mod, I think, and Mikawa as an inspiration, and the concealment I've got on this Azuma is, I think, 10.6 kilometers, so very stealthy, easy to get into a good position where you can get those broadsides and make use of the AP. Here we're making another mistake where we're broadside to the enemy Azuma. We're assuming he can't actually shoot at us right now, and, well, actually, never mind, I don't think he can. We easily could have been citadeled, though, with the first salvo he sent our way, so we're just sort of lucky there that we weren't. Gotta be careful. Don't want to be showing broadside in the Azuma. It is very susceptible to taking a lot of damage there. The citadel is exposed, and the ship is pretty well armored, which has the side effect of making it so that battleship and heavy cruiser shells, when they hit your side, they're pretty much always going to penetrate, and they're probably going to hit your citadel rather than over-penetrate. We're okay, though. Our team, maybe not so much. Our destroyer has been taken out for reasons that are mysterious to me. Anytime there's a destroyer at the end of the game, and it's a close game, that destroyer always tends to get itself sunk while trying to torpedo battleships. So I assume that's what happened here. But that leaves me and 2 friendly battleships versus 2 battleships and the enemy Azuma. The enemy Azuma is doing exactly what I was not doing and what I was trying to avoid doing, which is pushing bow in toward my teammates and getting stuck between the 2 of them in a crossfire. We should have shot AP at him there. We probably would have taken him out, but the HE does start a fire on him and does remove some of his hit points. He's shooting back at us in return. I don't know if he recognizes my name and just wants to get me off the face of the board or what, but going bow in like that, getting stuck between 2 battleships, terrible recipe for disaster in the Azuma. The enemy Azuma goes down, and that just leaves the Gneisenau and I think the Bismarck left. So I'm in a pretty safe position. Really, all I need to do for the rest of this battle is farm. And the Azuma does have 27 millimeters of armor plating, which means I should have no problem angling against the 15-inch guns of either the Gneisenau or the Bismarck. Either one of them cannot overmatch me, so I'm fairly safe, and I should be able to pump them full of high explosive. As you can see, we've managed to rack up 161,000 damage done so far. The Gneisenau has just taken a mighty blow from one of our teammates, so he's not going to be floating for too much longer. Hopefully we get a fire here that ends up finishing him off, and we do get that fire. The Bismarck is still at a little bit more than half health, so there's a nice chunk of HP for us to continue to farm after the Gneisenau inevitably goes down. The only question is, are my teammates going to go down? Well, the Jean Bart takes out the Gneisenau, and I think the Jean Bart himself, if he's the one closest to the Bismarck over there, is on pretty perilously low health, so things could start to happen. This Bismarck could take out that friendly battleship. He could take out the other battleship. I mean, if he plays this right, potentially he could win. But he's going to be tunnel visioned on that battleship for the entirety of the rest of that game, and as a consequence, he's not going to pay any attention to me whatsoever, so he's going to allow me to farm his superstructure with my high explosive and light fires. There's another fire, which he doesn't appear to be ready to put out, so that's going to take us to the 180,000 damage mark. The Bismarck does finish off the North Carolina, but by the time he finishes off the Jean Bart, if he ends up doing it, it's going to be far too late, and we're going to win the game, racking up more damage in the Azuma than I think I've ever done in this ship. Nearly 200k by the time this battle is ended, and our fire ends the battle with the killing blow on the Bismarck. So, quite a bit of damage done with the Azuma's excellent AP and excellent HE. I think this ship is in a much better state than it was before, and frankly, I think it's kind of fun to play now. So, if you were lukewarm on the Azuma, try giving it a chance now. See what you think, because I think it's quite improved. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.